So that video shoot I was talking about last week, we finished that this morning. Went really well. It is a beautiful day outside. It's very cold, but also very beautiful. We gotta go unpack some stuff, and we gotta go for a run. You know, I probably started my freelance video career in earnest in 2015. And so much technology has improved so much over the past 7 years. There are so many affordable cameras, microphones, and you can just do so many things so much more easily. And I'm pretty sure that there are much better options for lighting now than what we used. These soft boxes look great, but man, are they big, bulky, and a big pain. We're talking just regular CFL bulbs, man. Pretty sure you can do LED lights. They're a fraction of the size, use a fraction of the energy. I should probably look into those at some point. I just don't need these very often though. So if you've ever learned any type of creative craft or filmmaking, people say gear doesn't matter. And then lately there's been kind of a pushback to that and people say, well, gear does matter. The truth of it is you wanna get the right gear because certain gear matters more than others. And depending on what I'm doing, I would much rather have lights than I would a good camera. Lighting will do way more for the quality of your video than the camera will. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but I would rather have good lighting and a bad camera than a good camera and bad lighting. Generally. But there are certain things that you can only do with certain pieces of gear. For example, the video on this phone is really, really good, but you just can't do the same things that you can do with this camera because of actual physical limitations. They're working around that to some degree with software. This really nice shallow depth of field, you can kind of simulate it now with the cinematic mode. I mean, it's not bad. And if I only had this, then yeah, that'd be fine. Gear matters to a point, but other things probably matter more. Okay, here's a good example actually. I'm shooting at 1/8,000th of a second, f11, and ISO 256,000. This is technically the same exposure as I was just shooting at, but it looks terrible. And if you didn't know how to use your camera, you might film like this because you don't know what you're doing. Instead, you could shoot at 1/50th of a second, f2.0, and ISO 80. And you get this very nice looking image. And maybe that's the answer. The priority we put on gear is out of whack. Don't put gear right at the top. Put some other things like your skill and knowing how to use your gear above that. Okay, it's time for a run. So for those of you who do not like exercise, the thing is that it's really Stockholm Syndrome. And I know that's not a great answer or a great solution, but it's kind of true. You need to push yourself hard enough at the beginning, and it's gonna suck. But man, once that Stockholm Syndrome sets in, it feels really good. It's like a positive Stockholm Syndrome. The regular Stockholm Syndrome, not so good. Exercise Stockholm Syndrome. Even within a single exercise session, you gotta wait for Stockholm Syndrome to set in because at the beginning, it's so painful and you do not wanna do it. You just have to have a little bit of faith that it's going to start feeling better. And it is. Well, it was starting to feel pretty good, but now my stomach is a rumbling. I think I might have had too many cookies. That's what sucks, is when you have the will to run, but you do not have the physical ability to. Your body shuts it down. This is gonna sound really obvious, but it's a lot more subtle than you might think, which is you gotta know the strengths and limitations of each piece of gear too. For example, this GoPro is fantastic if you need something with a really good stabilizer and you're in good lighting like this. But if you're in really dim lighting like this, it looks terrible. One thing that I have had to learn is that no single piece of gear is going to be able to do everything for me at all times. Here is a perfect example, okay? Pretend for a moment that this is our big mirrorless camera that we normally use. The one that's currently on the tripod filming me right now. Look at the size of this. Best picture quality, fairly intuitive to use, but not exactly stealthy. Now my phone, on the other hand, these are ubiquitous. Everyone has one, they're always out. When you're filming, nobody looks at you weird and like, what are they doing? Obviously, they're taking a cell phone video that's not out of the ordinary. You're not gonna draw any stares. And with this monstrosity, you're gonna get people coming up to you asking you what you're doing, and in the worst case scenario, telling you to stop filming. Consequently, it finally occurred to me that when we're in public spaces, like doing a post-hike meal, or when we're at the airport, it makes a lot more sense to use this, because the quality jump that you get from this is not worth what you lose in being self-conscious while you're on camera, potentially being told to stop filming, or other negatives that this camera brings. With this, people are more relaxed on camera because it doesn't feel like this whole thing. You can start filming really quickly so nobody's futzing around with the dials and stuff. And nobody's gonna ask what you're doing because you're just making a video of somebody with a cell phone. So that's something I've kind of turned a corner on, is that quality is not the end-all be-all. It is advantageous to drop quality a little bit if you can have like a better stabilizer, or if people are more comfortable in front of the camera because it's a non-intrusive small camera on a phone. And that gulf in quality is also getting smaller and smaller. When I had the iPhone 11, I just was never very happy with the video quality. So I got the Sony ZV-1 as a small portable video camera that we can use and lots of like stealthy scenarios. But honestly, with iPhone 13 Pro, the video quality is so good and the convenience factor is so much higher that I really don't think that this is worth it anymore. Because it's so small, this is maybe the most unintuitive camera I've ever used. It is such a pain to dial in settings with these tiny buttons. The quality is very nice, but is it nice enough to throw away the convenience and inobtrusiveness of this? I don't think so. This is also totally disregarding cost. If you're not doing something professionally, I know that cost is a big factor, but if you take out cost from the equation, it actually becomes really interesting how you decide what equipment you should use in what scenario. And it's just a constant refinement. There's always gonna be some trade-offs with each piece of equipment. It's just learning what the strengths of each piece of equipment is, and then deciding when it's time to use that. Here's another example. This GoPro stabilizer, as I said, incredibly smooth. I'm gonna run down the hall. I can run back down the hall. It's gonna be smooth the whole time. Now with this camera right here, you can run down the hall. Is that watchable? I don't know. However, if you work within the limitations and walk nice and slow, you can still get a moving shot, and it's still gonna be quite stable, but it's just acknowledging the reality that what you're working with has a stabilizer that's only gonna stabilize so much. So you gotta work with it and acknowledge what it is, not what you want it to be. Now, with all that being said, technology is going to continually improve, and obviously, you can still make a great thing with any piece of equipment. This camera has terrible autofocus. We used it for 49 episodes of Adventure Archives, and it did us very solidly. If we had to keep using this, we could keep using it, obviously. But technology marches on, and it helps you do your job more easily. That's the ultimate goal. Like literally, I think actually the definition of technology is tools to make work easier. I could easily look that up right now, but I'm not going to for some reason. But do you get what I'm saying? That it's more subtle than just, is this camera better than this camera? It's, what do you have available to you, and how can you work within the strengths of the gear that you already have, or the gear that you want to get. I'll tell you one thing, my mom is a good grandmother. That is for sure. Okay, that's gonna do it for today's vlog. Thank you very much for watching as always. We got a video coming out on Friday. Be prepared for it. The 51st episode has been scheduled, barring any weather problems. That's gonna go through. The train is moving, wheels are greased. Thanks again. I'll see you in the next one. Now, with all of that being said, technology is going to continue to improve. Now, with all of that being said, technology is going to continue to improve. And now, with all that being said, technology is going to continually improve.